Hey everyone, welcome back to On the Stand with Ashish Arun. Today, I'm thrilled to welcome Eric Paul Rose, a true innovator with over 40 years of experience in product design and manufacturing. By designing cutting edge healthcare devices, consumer products, and industrial safety products, Eric has left an indelible mark on multiple industries. His contributions are backed by more than 50 patents, and his expertise has earned him a role as a sought after expert witness in high profile litigation, including the renowned 3M earplug case. Beyond his technical achievements, Eric is also a dedicated educator, mentoring the next generation of entrepreneurs and product developers. Eric, it's a pleasure to have you on the show.
It's great to be here today. Thank you very much, Ashish.
So, you've had a very rich and diverse career in product innovation and development. So, let's start with your journey. What initially sparked your interest in product development and innovation?
Sure. I grew up in the Rust Belt community of Cleveland, Ohio, and was always a tinkerer and fixing things around the house.
Mhm.
I rebuilt my first toaster at 14 and started rebuilding lawnmower engines at 16 and became one of the top machinists in my high school when I graduated and eventually made it on to engineering school.
Wow. So, your exposure to technology was pretty early in life. And later, when you entered the profession, do you think that exposure helped you understand the business aspect of the technology you worked on?
Sure. It's for me about reverse engineering the
Hmm.
product and understanding what did it really take to make that product in a way that delivered to the market what the market would value in a simple, easy to manufacture, affordable way. And it took many years to figure that out.
You've been involved in product innovation for a good 40 years,
Yes.
and it's a very diverse range. So, I know you started very early, but then, the spectrum of healthcare to industrial safety. So, obviously, an engineering background helps. But can you dive in a little into how that background laid the foundation of your innovation work?
Sure. I think back about my time, particularly in high school, learning to be a machinist and starting from a large block of metal and being able to machine away a given object and creating something out of nothing. And I find that analogy works for product design and development, whether it's machining metal, molding plastics, could be sheet metal, it could be any number of different materials or markets. It's important to understand how to go from nothing
Hmm.
into something, a product that can be produced at high volume at an affordable cost, put into the marketplace, safe and effective.
I was looking at your resume, and you transitioned into expert witness work in 2020.
Yes.
So, after you've had like a really long career in product development already, so was there a particular case or moment that sparked your interest in the field? Like, how did that happen?
It happened two different points in time in two different ways that ultimately collided.
Hmm.
In my engineering school, in product design engineering, I had a course called product law. And in the product law class, it was broken into two parts: product liability law, such as the Consumer Product Safety Commission, injury, failure mode and effect analysis, and patent law, intellectual property. And I found it fascinating. At one point, I thought about going into maybe intellectual property law, but I always enjoyed the creative side. Many, many, many years later, uh, 2007 through 2011, I was the research and development director for a company called Moldex Metric.
Hmm.
Moldex is one of the most highly regarded, privately held industrial safety products company, also today known as PPE or personal protective equipment. They produce N95 masks, earplugs, and similar. And because of that experience, when I launched my own business in 2012, I never imagined that that experience would become so valuable. But in 2020, I was called by a New York attorney who was looking for an expert who could speak to the issue of earplug design and manufacturing for the 3M military earplug case. This was on behalf of 250,000 plaintiffs in that MDL.
Oh, wow. That's a pretty high profile case to begin your expert witness career with. So,
Yes.
so now we know how you got that case. But what was the initial reactions? A lot of people get scared when they think about being an expert witness. They don't want to get cross-examined. They don't want to get deposed. They are told how attorneys are mean to experts. They try to berate them, question them. They try to portray them as hired guns. So when that attorney approached you, what was your initial reaction and the thought process of being an expert witness?
I wasn't as knowledgeable
Mm-hmm.
about what happens with experts as you just described. All
Okay.
I knew was the technical aspects of product design, development, manufacturing, product testing, quality assurance, more from the technical side. And of course, I was confident in my public speaking. I've been doing public speaking for over 30 years,
Mm-hmm.
teaching product innovation since 2009, but I didn't understand what it was like to get in the shark's tank.
Yeah.
So that came many months later in the case.
Yeah. And how was that experience?
It was the first deposition I had ever given. It
Mm-hmm.
was a 10-hour day, 7 hours on the record. Um, and the attorneys for 3M were tough, as you might imagine. That's their job. But all in all, the redirect at the end of the day was very short,
Mm-hmm.
and I was pleased with how it all worked out.
So, can you walk us a little bit about the approach you took towards the complex litigation, particularly in terms of probably analyzing the product design and development, like what issues were at play, to whatever extent you can talk about it?
Sure. Well, like any project for product design, whether it's a new product or you're doing an analysis on a failed product, I want to take a look at all of the design requirements. So, what was the product supposed to do? Was that documented? Was it validated? Was it checked against real world environments for the users? Were there any types of analyses for foreseeable misuse? Was there a durability standard? Would that be a short-term use, a long-term use? All of that has to be analyzed. What about environmental? So could it be used in the desert in Iraq?
Mm-hmm.
Would it be used in the winter time in the northern part of the US? How does storage and handling and environmental conditions in transit affect the product's ultimate design and manufacturing? So all of the requirements have to be understood first.
Mm-hmm.
Second is the actual design. Did the design keep in mind and fulfill those requirements during the design, the prototyping, and then ultimately the testing? So it's a checks and balance situation. The requirements have to reconcile with the test results. And if they don't, the product's not ready for release. And those
Mm-hmm.
are the kinds of documents I want to look at, reports I want to look at, people that speak to that, maybe in a deposition. I want to read that and understand what was or wasn't done.
And recently, a new MDL has been making the news, and I know it's like it may or may not be within your area of expertise, but it's about a port catheter involving the company Angio Dynamics. So the question I want to ask is, What advice, based on your experience with being an expert witness in a high prolific case, what advice would you have for attorneys when they are looking for an expert who's suitable for such high profile bellwether cases?
Sure. It's a balance. Someone can be technically an expert about catheters. I remember the first job I ever worked at, American Hospital Supply, right out of college, and one of the engineers was running around the R&D department saying, "We killed the pig. We killed the pig. Oh no, we have to go back to the drawing board." Because sure enough, this particular catheter did not work as intended. So he was a technical expert, but his ability to communicate to a non-technical audience was not something that I think would have been suited for expert witness work. So being able to take technical content and turn it into a story that with a simple analogy that can be played for, uh, discussed in front of a jury is a very different animal. It has to be simple, straightforward, non-technical, very illustrative, to the point. And that, my experience with talking to a lot of expert witnesses, that can be quite challenging to get that
Yeah.
balance.
Yeah, I remember in the last season of our podcast, we interviewed Michael Kaplan, and he has about 47 years in forensic accounting, and he actually trains experts on testifying. And this was his takeaway when we asked, like, this was his insight when we asked him about, how can experts deal with the new amended Rule 702 and establish the link between the science and the methodology, and be better at testifying. And he said, if you have a kid at home, if you have a sixth grade, like somebody in the fifth grade or the sixth grade, try and give your testimony in front of them in a way that they understand it.
That's great.
And if you can make them understand, then you'll be a great expert and you won't have to worry about it. So, I mean, yeah, it's pretty spot on. And that quality is what differentiates a okay expert from a great expert, the ability to explain it to laymen.
I would argue it differentiates between a purely technical expert
Mm-hmm.
and an expert witness.
Fair enough. So you also have more than 50 patents in various industries. So I don't want to ask you how that happens, but amongst, like your many inventions, do you have a favorite one?
Well, I would say the favorite one is actually not patented.
Okay.
Um, when I was working at Mattel Toys for 5 years, one
Hmm.
of the last projects I worked on was a co-venture with Intel.
Okay.
And we helped Intel to launch a new brand called Intel Play. And the flagship product that Mattel launched, this was for the Christmas 1999 season, was a digital video microscope for kids that retailed for $99. And this was back when webcams were first coming out, and it was one of the first USB connected devices at Mattel Toys. So being able to work with a global team of about 50 professionals to integrate optics and plastics and electronics and software on a global platform, and I acted as a global program manager essentially,
Hmm.
was an amazing project, and it became the number one tech toy of that Christmas season,
Wow.
sales wise.
So what I can see is like something like this would also involve a lot of trade-offs between, your imagination and your creativity on one hand and practical constraints on the other hand when you're especially like developing a new innovative product. So how do you manage these trade-offs? What are some of the key factors that help you decide that, okay, this is something that is worth trying and this is something that's totally impractical, let's not even go there?
Sure. Well, I have an article on this called Managing the New Product Development Project Trade-offs. And some of those trade-offs, for example, schedule. At Mattel, we used to talk about Christmas never moves. So you
Hmm.
can't be late and say,
Oh,
sorry, Walmart, we'll ship your Christmas toys a couple weeks after Christmas. It doesn't work that way. So engineers like to engineer, and sometimes it's hard to stop engineering. And I've done that for many, many years and learned that there comes a point in time where it's good enough.
Yeah.
So schedule can be critical. On the other hand, for a medical device, schedule is not what's king. It has to be the feature set, the functionality of the product without regard to schedule. It has to be safe and effective. It has to be approved by FDA. It's going to be in market for many years likely, and you can't just change it and make a rolling change overnight like you might for software. So schedule, certainly one of them. Product cost is very important. When somebody tries to cheap out, you've heard the
Hmm.
term, on a product, then it may not have the durability in market. So these are just a couple of, as I recall, there's 5 critical trade-offs
Hmm.
in this article that I published, which is available.
So we'll, and is the article available on the internet so that we can
I
put
have a
it in the
link.
show notes?
I can
Great.
get you the link. Yes.
Great. So we'll put it in the show notes for anybody who would want to read the full article. I know that I definitely want to take a look for sure. So this is the trade-off. Let's talk about some of the pitfalls. Like with so much experience, you've probably seen your fair share of challenges in product development. So what do you think are some of the common pitfalls in product development that companies often overlook?
Sure. I would say the definition of the right test plan for the product.
Mm-hmm.
So understanding what I call the user personas. Some people also call it a usage scenario. Who's going to use the product? How are they going to use the product? You may have, for example, I worked in the dental industry for many years. Is it going to be the dentist that's going to use it? Is it going to be the dental hygienist that's going to use it? Maybe it's both. Have you done enough interviewing of those people to understand what each of their requirements are and then develop a test plan that meets those expectations of the different personas that are going to be involved with the product? We spoke a little earlier about this idea of the real world use and the
Yeah.
foreseeable misuse. More often than not, there's pressure on the product development team to get the product out in the market quickly at the lowest possible product cost.
Mm-hmm.
And it's important that the R&D team is able to push back when appropriate and say, that's great, but we need to finish this testing so that we can reconcile the expected requirements against what we really got in the lab, and maybe even did a soft rollout in a very controlled environment with beta testing to show that it does perform as expected, or perhaps there's some things we didn't see and we want to change the design before a full rollout.
And have you ever designed, this is a tricky one, have you ever designed anything for the legal industry?
I have not designed anything for the legal industry. One of my clients did.
Mm-hmm.
It was a software docketing
Okay.
program to help attorneys manage the numerous aspects of cases. And
Interesting.
that was an interesting experience. My understanding is she has launched it now.
Mm-hmm. Great. So, as an expert witness, again, I mean, I understand that your expertise was spot on for the 3M case, and then the attorney reached out to you. At what point of time did you start looking into the legal standards and the legal framework that applies to expert witnesses? Like the Daubert case is there, then Rule 702 is there. There are a couple of other precedents, and then different precedents for different states. So, did you ever feel the need to get more like better acquainted with the legal standards that apply to expert witness testimony, or that never came up as an issue?
It has come up, and it came up more recently with a California case. I've worked with cases in Florida, New York, California, working with a case now in Illinois. Uh, it's hard for experts to be able to manage all of the different requirements. So I highly recommend that experts speak to their retaining counsel
Yeah.
about the requirements state by state. In the
Mhm.
3M case, federal case, it's important to understand the federal requirements. Daubert uh, and 3M did a Daubert challenge on me. So uh, stick close to retaining counsel when it
Hmm.
comes to being guided state by state.
So we are seeing a lot of Daubert challenges coming up across the board against seasoned experts, new experts, experts. Like it's pretty much table stakes these days. If you're an expert and you are being retained in a case, even though you are doing your best to stay in your lane, you're confident about your methodology, it's relevant. So, talking about the Daubert challenge that you mentioned, like can you talk about what what was the Robert challenge about and what really happened?
Sure. This has been quite a while, and the Daubert challenge is available
Hmm.
publicly on the
Okay.
internet for me. But the one thing that was actually surprising was that 3M did not challenge my credentials, which I had heard that typically a Daubert challenge would include a challenge of credentials. They did challenge a little bit the methodology, as I recall. They challenged one of the um, opinions at the end that was trying to tie a
Hmm.
particular design defect to a injury outcome. But in the end, the court found that my methodology was sound,
Hmm.
in keeping with what was required as an expert, and there was no question about my ability to opine in the earplug case. They mentioned something about one potential instruction in
Hmm.
regards to this connection between the injury outcome and the design defect.
Yeah, I mean, I see a lot of experts worrying about a Daubert challenge, but I think a Daubert challenge against your testimony that fails, there can't be anything better than that, because that's a judge validating and certifying that you are an expert, you are qualified, you have sound methodology, your testimony is relevant, and you're good to go.
Yes.
That's a testimonial from the judge themselves. So I really think experts should, if there's a Daubert challenge, embrace it. Like that's where you've survived the Daubert challenge. You should embrace it and probably use it for marketing. Like what's your take on the fact that your testimony got challenged? And again, and if you can tap into your memories from back then, first case, and there's a Daubert challenge. Like, do you remember feeling a little uneasy about it, or was the attorney there to help you, guide you? What was that experience like?
Yeah, fortunately, the attorney was there. And again, I recommend stay close to retaining counsel.
Yeah.
Um, I was very pleasantly surprised. The court affirmed not only my methodology, but my opinions, that they were founded with citations. Um, I cited technical journals, independent articles, textbooks. Again, Daubert challenges aren't, as you mentioned, they're not the thing to worry about. It's,
Yeah.
have you done your homework in the creation of your work, in your report, in your deposition, so that you can not be, it's not Eric Rose's opinion. It's Eric Rose as a voice to independent expert standards in the industry, and simply aiding the trier of fact that this data exists.
Hmm.
And it, in my opinion, was overlooked during the design, development, or testing, or not properly applied.
So you talked about being close to your retaining attorney. So what does effective collaboration between an expert witness and a legal team look like?
It's certainly a challenge.
No
You
pun
cannot,
intended.
yeah, yeah, oh, that's very good. You cannot be seen as an advocate.
Uh,
So I was in trial recently, my first trial, and retaining counsel said something to me on the witness stand. Mr. Rose, you would agree then all of the competitive products that you used to speak to the issue of state of the art, um, they're all the products that are competitive include this feature. Is that right, Mr. Rose? All the products include this feature except for the defendants? To which I said to the retaining counsel, no, counselor, that's not what I said. What I said was that all of the products I reviewed and included in my report included that feature, but I cannot speak to every single product that may exist in the
Yeah.
industry. And the reason that I bring that up, Ashish, in this example is because you have to be impartial.
Yeah.
It's not about trying to be an advocate for retaining counsel. It's being clear as to what you see. I was
Yeah.
on a furniture case and the defendant's expert wrote a report. I got to see before I finished my report, and it was significantly like my report.
Yeah.
And it wasn't necessarily what the defense counsel wanted to see, but the expert wrote an impartial report. And he and I essentially said the same thing, that
Yeah.
the defendant's client had a problem.
Mm-hmm. Oh, and I think the retaining attorney also in this case, in hindsight, would have been grateful that you did not just agree to whatever question he was framing, because to be saying something like that could also lead to that sentence or that testimony being stricken, because you can't possibly know that all products have that feature, that same feature. So, I mean,
Correct.
yeah, so I think that was not just a right move, but also a great move to make, even for the case and for the retaining attorney.
And
So,
it was the truth, most
yeah,
importantly.
most importantly. So, aside from the 3M case, which was on product liability, what are the other types of cases that attorneys engage you for?
Sure. I serve three types of litigators:
Okay.
product liability litigators, as we spoke of in the 3M case, and
Mm-hmm.
a significant portion of my work has been in product liability, both for defense as well as for plaintiff side. But also, I'm on a commercial dispute case in
Okay.
the N95 mask industry between a manufacturer of N95 masks and a distributor. And I was retained by the distributors council
Mm-hmm.
to discuss quality, product design, performance testing, etc. So commercial dispute cases often can use my expertise. And lastly, the third type of litigator I work with are patent infringement. I
Okay.
worked with a patent infringement attorney who had an electromechanical device that was being accused of infringing. Their client was being accused of infringement, and I was able to bring in a colleague of mine, an electronics engineer, to demonstrate through reverse engineering that the defendant's design did not infringe on the plaintiff's
Mm-hmm.
design.
Interesting. So I have two questions there, two follow-up questions there. One is on the collaboration part where you brought in another expert.
Yes.
So now this is something that in many areas we don't see. We'd usually see that attorneys would like bring the pieces together, and they would retain like one type of expert and the other type of expert. So what really happened here? Like in this case, was it like you felt that okay, this aspect needs this particular type of expert, and this specific expert will be helpful, or was it the attorney's request that can you help them find an expert in a related field? Like,
I've worked on two cases where I've brought experts in at my
okay.
request.
Mm-hmm.
One was the 3M earplug case, and there's some particular detailed engineering I wanted done. And then this electromechanical device where the product needed to be reversed engineered to down to the schematic
Mm-hmm.
level. And that's not an expertise nor a lab that I had. And I told retaining counsel that I needed that expertise. There was one case in the furniture industry where counsel had brought in a professional engineer, a licensed professional engineer on a case to do stress calculations, tip over calculations, and my role was more of the product design and manufacturing. And the retaining counsel had us collaborate.
Mm-hmm.
So it can work either way, but it's great when retaining counsel understands that one expert can't do it all in this
Yeah.
case, and there needs to be more than one.
And do you think at times retaining attorneys may be unaware of the fact that they need another expert? Because again, they are
Yes.
not the technical experts. So,
Yes. So there's a case I'm on now where it's not only a product design issue, but there is an issue of warnings.
mhm,
And so if they need a warnings expert, then I have people that I can refer out to,
mhm,
but I want to stay in my lane.
yeah.
And my lane is product design and manufacturing and everything around it. Uh, product market fit. Was it the right product? Product testing, product quality, material selection, etc. But the application of an ANSI standard for a particular warning language, that's not my area of expertise.
Mhm. So, Eric, you told us that you took a course in product law in undergraduate school,
Yes,
and I can also see that you also taught product innovation at
yes,
some point. So, do you think this has had an impact and has helped you in your journey as an expert witness?
absolutely. When anyone teaches,
Mm-hmm.
then the content inevitably gets ingrained deeper into your thought processes, a methodology, independent processes as to how to do, let's say, in this case, product innovation. And knowing that my expertise in teaching has primarily been at the university level, but also I've done guest lectures at high schools. So
Mm-hmm.
whether it's high schools, undergraduate positions I've held, or graduate school work where I've taught product innovation at universities such as Pepperdine University or Loyola Marymount, Rice University. Currently, I'm an entrepreneur in residence at California State University, Northridge. It helps to be able to communicate methodologies, content, processes, communication techniques to non-technical people.
So, what um, other skills do you think are essential, like the ability to explain, the ability to teach? Are there any other skills, like probably soft skills, that you think are essential for professionals who are interested in becoming expert witnesses?
Sure. If an expert hasn't had experience in public speaking, debate, um, anything in the area of communicating technical content in a non-technical way,
Yeah.
then I highly recommend it. So it could be Dale Carnegie public speaking. It could be
Yeah.
Toastmasters. It could be a debate class, any number of those types of activities. I still do a lot of public speaking, probably one or two per month,
Mhm.
where I'll be speaking on any number of topics, typically to non-technical people.
So, for somebody who may have fewer years of experience than you do and maybe similar skill sets, and if they want to get into expert witness work, where do you think they can start? Like, I know, like in your case, you did not go out actively looking for expert witness work and an attorney reached out to you. But if somebody wants to, or maybe like, like if you have to advise Eric Rose from 2020, and if he was probably looking to become an expert witness, so knowing what you know today, what are one or two things that a, a professional can do, a technical expert can do to transition into being an expert witness?
Sure. I think there's a few things. If you have areas of expertise, think about creating a white paper on that topic
Mm-hmm.
and being able to use that as an underlay for speaking engagements. So I've done that on 3 keys to successful new products. I've done that on customer discovery and product market fit, creating a product that the market wants, and a number of other topics. I think I've got 16 different talk topics that I've given presentations on regularly. So getting that out in industry to know that you have expertise in certain areas, and then you get the practice speaking is a great technique. The other is the expert witness registries. And I
Mm-hmm.
want to differentiate expert witness registries from expert witness agencies.
Yeah.
So an agency will take a commission on your hourly rate and they'll shop you around and then they will pay you and it becomes sometimes quite challenging.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas a registry, you pay a small fee, $500, $600, $700, whatever it is, to be listed there. And then that registry will use their search engine optimization for keywords and so forth to get you out into the world for whatever
Yeah.
your expertise is. I do recommend that. So I think that's done well for me.
Mm-hmm. And do you do any networking with probably other experts or attorneys who do the kind of work where they'll need your experience?
Sure. Well, the answer is yes. I'm in a business networking organization. I was brought into this organization through a patent attorney because I do a lot of core product innovation, product design, product development work. And patent attorneys often need that for their client. That's the provisor's business network. We're about 10,000 people strong now in
Mm-hmm.
the United States. And then I'm involved with a couple expert witness networking groups, one out of New York. There's now one in Southern California. And then just this month, I got together my first expert witness networking group that I'm testing the waters on for experts who are in the Pacific or Mountain time zone
Mm-hmm.
to see if they want to get together every couple months over Zoom. So I highly recommend that type of networking as well.
Yeah, I'm familiar with the one in Southern California. What do you think is the biggest advantage of being in a group like that, where
Well, I
you're
think it's
meeting other experts on over Zoom?
it's a few different things. First, you learn what I'll call tips and tricks,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's billing, terms and conditions, preparing for a deposition, all of those tips and tricks are quite helpful. The other is referral for business. So uh, I don't recall that I've been in an expert witness networking group where there's anyone who's got my expertise. So certainly, if someone hears of an injury attorney who's looking for a product design and manufacturing expert, then someone from that network will think of me, highly likely.
So, coming to the last segment for today,
Sure.
where we talk about, like the impending doom or boom, it depends on how you look at it, of artificial intelligence. So, what impact have you seen in product development in general, and anything that you have worked on in particular, where AI has come in and probably made an impact?
So I've heard stories where, experts are using AI and it's real problematic because as soon as you read an AI report, you know it's an AI report. It has a telltale sign of being written as such. So I don't recommend, obviously, using it as is. I tried AI for a white paper that I'm writing about why patent attorneys should use market research, should suggest to their clients that their clients use market research before filing a patent. And the AI report was exactly as you would expect. It sounds like an AI report. There were some things that just weren't quite right, but it was what I would call stimulus. It
Hmm.
gave me some thoughts, some ideas, some concepts, some things that I could go pursue in terms of looking for digging deeper and whether there might want to be some of those aspects in my white paper. But I, of course, wouldn't use it directly, only as what I'll call stimulus.
Hmm. And anything that you would want to add and leave our audience with today?
Sure. It's the balance. I love the balance of my core product innovation work,
Hmm.
where last night I'm on the phone with an entrepreneur who has a problem dealing with a Asian supplier not doing what they said they were going to do. And today here I'm talking to you about my expert witness business. And having that balance, it's great synergies for both sides of the business. I love doing that and I recommend that. Don't give up one or the other. I think you can do both, and I think they really feed on each other and inform one another, and it's a great way to balance.
That's excellent. So if somebody wants to reach out to you and get in touch, maybe another expert, somebody wants to join the group that you are testing right now, or an attorney who wants to retain you, what's the best way to find you?
Sure, if you just Google Eric Paul Rose, you should be able to find me. There's only a couple of us in the country. I'm the only one who's a NPDP, which is a new product development professional. I'm certified as such. So you can always also Google Eric Paul Rose NPDP. You'll find me on my website, Pinnacle PI, that's PINNACLEPI.com, and on LinkedIn, Eric Paul Rose or Eric P. Rose, and you'll be able to find me that way as well.
Thank you so much, Eric. I definitely learned a lot about the various aspects of product development, about working on high profile cases, about working in a diverse range of industries, and on being an early innovator. So, lots of takeaways for me, for other experts, even for attorneys who work in product liability and commercial disputes and patent infringement. So, thank you so much for your time today. This was everything I hoped it would be. And I hope to stay in touch and talk to you
My
again
pleasure,
sometime.
Ashish. Thank you again for having me.
If you found this podcast useful, remember to subscribe and give us a review on Spotify, Apple Podcast, YouTube, or wherever you listen to podcasts. This will help other users find this podcast and benefit from the insights shared by our guests. If you'd like to be featured as a guest on this show, please write to media@xlightum.com. See you in the next episode.